Watching these scenes, many people hold their breath, dark thoughts creep into their minds, and an uneasy feeling takes over. In the United States, the death penalty is a legal punishment in 29 states. Texas has traditionally been the leader in the number of executions. In the U.S., life imprisonment for one person cost the state of Texas approximately $740,000, while the death penalty costs over $1 million. The expenses cover not only the lethal injection, but also court proceedings, appeals, lawyers, and the lifelong incarceration of the prisoner using taxpayer money. 1 out of every 25 people sentenced to death is innocent. From 1973 to 2015, 156 people were released from death row in the U.S. after their charges were dropped, including 6 in 2015 alone. Additionally, the U.S. has an exceptionally long waiting period between sentencing and execution. According to the DPIC, Death Penalty Information Center, out of the 25 people executed in 2018, only 3 had waited less than 10 years for their execution. The shortest wait was 7 years. 16 people waited more than 15 years, and some waited over 30 years. In Alabama, Walter Leroy Moody waited 22 years for his execution, becoming the oldest person executed in the U.S. since 1976 at the age of 83. Currently, state laws provide 5 methods of execution. Since 2000, the overwhelming majority have been carried out by lethal injection. This method involves administering a lethal dose of poison or powerful drugs to the condemned. The electric chair is now rarely used, with no executions by this method in the U.S. since 2013. However, in 2018, 63-year-old Edmund Zagorski in Nashville, Tennessee, chose this method, believing it would be quicker and less painful. Zagorski was sentenced to death in 1984 and waited 34 years for execution. The gas chamber kills by poisoning with toxic or asphyxiating gas. The last time it was used was in 1999 for the execution of 37-year-old Walter LeGrand in Arizona. On June 18, 2010, Utah carried out an execution by firing squad for the first time in many years. Ronnie Lee Gardner, who chose this method himself, was executed. He had the choice between lethal injection and firing squad. Gardner was the first person executed by firing squad in the U.S. since John Albert Taylor in 1996. Hanging has been used only 3 times since 1990, all before 2000. As of November 2019, the last person hanged in the U.S. was murderer Billy Bailey, who was executed at age 49 at the Delaware Correctional Center in Smyrna. The last meal, a special meal granted to death row inmates shortly before execution, is fulfilled within reasonable limits and has some restrictions. In Texas, the state with the highest number of executions, condemned prisoners are held in the Polunsky Unit Death Row, located a short drive north of Houston. At noon, a white van leaves the prison gates, transporting the condemned to the Huntsville unit about 40 minutes away. This is where Texas's execution chamber is located. Upon arrival, the prisoner is searched, given a shower, clean clothes, fingerprinted, and placed in a solitary cell. Unlike other states, Texas has banned last meals since 2011 due to abuse of the privilege. By law, executions must begin after 6 p.m. local time. Prisoners are held until then in a cell about 9 meters from the execution chamber door. The execution room measures 2.7 by 3.7 meters. Third parties are usually present at executions. The number and composition of witnesses vary by state, but typically include relatives of the condemned, victims' families, lawyers, and a priest. Under Texas law, representatives from the Associated Press may also observe. 2 adjacent rooms with glass windows overlooking the execution chamber hold 2 separate groups, one for the victim's family and the other for the condemned's family. Measures are always taken to ensure they do not meet. At 6 p.m., about 5 officers escort the condemned to the execution chamber. Strapped to a gurney, the prisoner is given the right to last words. Then the executioner, whose identity is always concealed, administers the lethal injection through a wall opening. Death usually occurs within 5 to 10 minutes. The death certificate lists the cause of death as homicide. An autopsy follows, and the body is released to the executed person's family. If there are no relatives, burial takes place in a state cemetery. Most graves have no names, only the prisoner's ID number and execution date. For example, one such marker reveals that Kenneth Allen McDuff was executed by lethal injection in Texas on November 17, 1998.